Hello! So it's Monday morning and I have a busy day ahead of me in the studio. So I thought I'd bring you along for the ride and show you what I'm getting up to today and a little bit of a behind the scenes. So today I have quite a few things to do. So I'm going to start the day, I've got some emails to respond to. I have a commercial license to issue for one of my customers, and then I have some prototypes to make for a potential brand deal, so I need to make some flowers for that as well and just figure out exactly what I'm doing for that. And then if I still have any time left, which is unlikely, but we'll see, and then I also have some editing still to do on my latest tutorial video, so I'm going to try and do a little bit more of the voiceover editing on that. So we'll see where we get to, but it's unlikely I'll get to that point, but hopefully, who knows. And then at some point I have to get a dog walk in there as well for this guy. Abby, you want to go for a walk? The face. So I'm just working on a few emails and I've had a question from a customer, which I do get asked a lot. So thought I would just share that with you as well. So the question was, what paper can you use if you don't have the same ones as I have available? So I am finding quite a lot lately that certain materials are not available in different parts of the world. I have a lot of questions like this, like I can't find X, Y, or Z material. What do you recommend instead? So with crepe paper, you're just going to have to use whatever you have available and then you can adjust things accordingly. So if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that my favourite is the German heavyweight crepe. That doesn't mean that the other crepe papers are bad though, that's just my personal preference. There's just things that you will need to do or to adjust to use a different type of crepe paper. So if you have the option to use the heavyweight German, then great. Obviously, when I'm designing my templates, I'm using that particular paper, so that's what those templates are designed to be used with. But you can easily use other paper, you'll just have to adjust the template to accommodate the amount of stretch in the paper, or do a little bit of trial and error just to make sure that the stretch doesn't affect it. So the heavyweight German has 250% stretch. So obviously that means it can stretch 2.5 times. To be honest, I do find it can stretch a little bit more than that, but typically it's 2.5 times its actual width. So if you find a crepe paper that has a similar amount of stretch in it and is a similar thickness, then that's going to work great. The Italian Cartotecnica Rossi paper is really good as an alternative for that. I do have a few concerns with using that. Mainly it's the colour fastness, like it does tend to fade if you put it in sunlight for too long. And my main bugbear with it is the machine lines in the paper. Having said that, you can smooth out the machine lines in the paper. There's just a little bit more work involved. So if you are going to use the Italian, then I recommend you use alcohol inks as well on your paper. So what will happen when you wet the paper using alcohol inks and isopropyl alcohol, it's going to stretch it out a little bit and then it also like shrinks back as it dries. So then when you come to reshape that paper once the ink's dried, it's going to be a lot easier to get rid of that line. You might even be able to get rid of it completely. So it's definitely worth trying if that's what you have available. Now I know a lot of people also struggle just to get hold of any kind of heavy crepe at all. So a lot of the times what's available is the extra fine crepe or the very thin. The Italian floristic is a good option for that. There's also the German extra fine or the doublet. There are others that you can get, like there's Chinese options available. The thing I would avoid is going for anything really cheap. It can be very tempting just to go with the cheapest crepe paper. I know crepe is not the cheapest product in the world, especially if you've got to pay shipping fees, it can get quite pricey. The problem I find is there's not enough stretch in cheap crepe paper. So if you're not sure what you're buying, you want a good, nice quality, thick paper. You'll just be able to tell by the feel of it. If it's going to rip between your fingers, it's probably not going to be the best thing to work with. And then if it's got like ridges in the paper, so you know that it will stretch out further, it's got like room to play with, then that's also a good option. So personally, I would go with the German if you get the chance. If you don't have that option, then try some of the Italian, either the heavy Italian, or there are a few different thicknesses now in the thinner ones as well. So there's a 90, I believe, and then there's also the thinner ones. So for example, there's a company in the UK, which I know people have used, which has the German crepe, but it's not the Leah Griffith brand. And that has the machine lines in it still, but they're not as pronounced as like the Italian would be. So that's an option, like for example, if you're in the UK or Ireland and you need to get hold of some of that. I do have links for that on my website on the supplier section if you're interested. And then Other than that, it's just going to be finding whatever is available in your neck of the woods. So whatever you find, give it a try. I suggest you use the template first of all, and then you'll just need to adjust it accordingly. So if your paper doesn't have much stretch in it, then you might need to make the template a little bit wider. And if it's particularly thin, it depends on the flower you're making. But if you're making something that needs to be a bit thicker, or that you need the strength to the paper, like it needs to be durable, then you can laminate it and make your own doublet with it. So if you've adjusted the template and it's still not working, then please do reach out to me and I'll try and help as best I can. As I say, I get emails like this all the time. You would not be the first person to ask. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm just dealing with right now. So next up, I just need to issue a commercial license. So I have the option available on my website if you're looking to use your paper flower templates for commercial use. So for example, if you're going to make a bouquet and sell it, then there is an option to buy a commercial license for that. So this one in particular is for Lisa. Hi Lisa. So she has bought a few commercial licenses because she's starting up a business, and she is going to be using a couple of these templates for some of her flowers that she's going to be selling. So if you are interested in doing the same thing, then obviously these licenses are available on the website. You can just go ahead and purchase one through there. And then I just have to input your details as I'm doing right now. And I will send across a copy for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now and then send that across to Lisa. So next up, I'm going to be working on some samples for a collaboration that's potentially coming up. I need to submit some samples to see if it's what the brand are looking for. And if it does go ahead, it would be quite a big order. So what I'm trying to do right now is figure out a way I can make 150 bouquets in as little time as possible, because also there's not much time until this would be required if I do get it. So I'm just looking at my colour palette, and it's for 3 different types of flowers. So there's a peony, a rose and a sunflower. Now the sunflower is obviously easy, that colour is kind of set, so I don't need to worry about that. But I just want to figure out the colour palette for my peonies and my roses. So I have a few options so that the brand can pick, and I think it will probably be a mix of colours as well, depending on what they want to go with. But just for my samples, I want something that's going to sit nicely together. So what I'm thinking, I'm going to use this pink as the main colour potentially. So this is Pink Hibiscus from the Leah Griffith English Garden range. And then I want to add some depth to the flower. So what I'm going to do right now is figure out with some little samples whether I'm going to do alcohol inks and pan pastels, just alcohol inks or just pan pastels, possibly even just the standard paper, but I think I'd like to try and do a bit of a mix if I can. So I'm just going to cut some little squares out of this and then do some test ones and see how those dry, and then see where we go from there. So when I'm doing this, I usually stretch up my paper to be about 50% stretched. It doesn't really matter, but you just want to make sure that whatever tester you're doing is going to be accurate to the flowers you're going to end up making. So most flowers you don't use unstretched crepe, so you can either test it on a 50% or you can do a full stretch if you think you might be doing something like that with the particular flower that you're making. And then the other thing to do when you're doing this is always make a note of exactly what you put into each particular batch. So it's very hard to replicate it if you don't know the exact number of drops, and also the exact mil of your isopropyl alcohol as well. So I actually have this little measuring cup, which to be honest came from a formula tube. So this used to have baby formula in it, but it's perfect because it's very accurate. Like it goes up to 60 ml at the top. So obviously there's lots of precise measurements in between, which is great. So I usually start with 10 ml in here, and then I will add in my alcohol ink drops into this one first of all, and then get a colour that I'm happy with in here and then dilute it with that afterwards. This is the Tim Holtz Raspberry. And I'm trying to get a little bit more of a red colour. I go more crimson than pink. So I'm also going to use red pepper, also from the Tim Holtz range. And then I'm going to add in this 10 ml. And then I'm just going to apply that to one of these and see how that looks. Now it's making it a lot more vibrant than I was hoping for. I was hoping for something a little bit darker. So what I might do is do one version with the same and then one version with a darker colouring on it. I'm trying to navigate a dog at my feet here so that I don't run him over with my chair. Okay, so I'm going to give the mushroom a try. Now, it is obviously not the right red that I'm looking for, but I'm hoping that that contrast might just sort of take the bright vividness down a little bit, which is what I'm looking for. It's very vivid at the moment. So the mushroom, I'm going to just do 1 drop to start with and mix that in. And when you're doing a darker colour like this, it's better to do it 1 drop at a time. That's not made much difference. So I'm going to do another 1. Okay, so we've got 2 drops of mushroom in there. I don't know if you can see there, but that's made it look a lot more, I would say murky, but that is what I'm going for, like dark kind of colouring. So let's go with that. So what I'm trying to do first of all is get the right base colour, and then I'm going to do some blending to kind of make sure I have that right before I go any further. So I think this is still not quite right, but I'm definitely on the right lines. So what I'm going to do is draw 4 squares on my paper to make it kind of idiot proof. Okay, so then I'm just going to write down what's in each one. Probably should have drawn bigger squares, but I'll show you what I'm doing here. So I've just got my little squares and I write down what's in each one. And then the next one, I think I'm going to try and go darker. So what I'm going to do is add another 3 drops of red pepper, and then I'm going to do 3 drops of mushroom. It's subtle, the difference in these, but it is enough that I think it's worth it. I just want to try one more option. A lot of this is guesswork. Once you have been doing it a while, you'll be able to guess more accurately, but it does take a bit of time. It's not straightforward. Remember, I've been doing this many years, and I did art in school and college and university, so I've always had that training for colour mixing. So this isn't something that necessarily has to come natural to you, so don't panic if it doesn't. It is just trial and error until you kind of figure it out your way of doing things. Oh, that's nice and dark actually. I think I want to paint some plain isopropyl onto my bigger squares, and then I'm going to try and dab the darker colour on the bottom so I can see how the gradient will look. And the quantity doesn't matter for this because it's just obviously plain alcohol. And then I'm just going to paint that over the whole of the square of paper, so that just helps to blend it. So what it will do is, when I then apply the colour, rather than being a harsh line, it should just easily kind of merge. Okay, so then I'm going to take this and I'm going to kind of blob at the bottom of the paper, and it's going to hopefully give me a nice gradient. Okay, I'm going to pick you up and show you what I mean. Okay, so I'm doing this one-handed because I don't have my tripod set up, so we'll see how it goes. So I'm just literally blobbing this at the bottom, and I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of nicely blending up the paper, which is really good. That's what I was hoping for. Okay, so that's good. I think I'm going to leave it at that because I think that's what I want. So we've got the pink here, this is the original at the top, and then the red at the bottom. And then hopefully as that dries, that's going to be more obvious. It's reflecting the light quite a lot right now, but I think it's the kind of colouring that we're hoping for. So I'm just going to let that dry and see what we get. And then I'm going to do a second one just over here, seeing as I'm already here anyway, just because I want to do one option where I test it with potentially with pan pastels as well, just to see how that turns out. I do prefer the look of the alcohol inks, but I'm thinking in terms of dry time, if I have to dry all those roses, that's going to be a lot of paper, and firstly, where am I going to put it all? And secondly, the timing for doing all of that so that I can get on and make flowers, it just might be a bit more tricky. So we'll see how we go. So I'm going to use my tea rose template for this one. So I've just printed that out on normal paper, and then I'm going to cut around these and then trace them onto some cardstock so it's a bit thicker and easier to work with. And then the next step is to turn all of this into this. Okay, so I've dyed some of my paper and I'm going to take a little break now and go and get some lunch. But I just wanted to show you where I got to so far. So in my very professional setup behind me on the bed, I have some drying. So I've got the rose petals here. So these are with the alcohol inks. And so I've done the wash that we talked about before, and then I just added some little details on the top, on the outside layer, using a fine paintbrush. And then I've got this sheet of green here, and I've got another one on my desk over here. And that's going to be for some peony leaves. So I wouldn't necessarily need to dye the paper for peony leaves. There's a really good, I think it's called juniper, which is a really nice green in the Leah Griffith range. However, I've completely run out of it, and this request came in last night and they want it by Wednesday, so I'm not going to get any new paper in time. So I decided to dye the paper instead. And it's quite nice because it gives it more variety and depth to the paper, so it does look more realistic. But you don't necessarily need to do this step if you're looking to get a nice green. So if you're looking for this kind of colouring, I recommend the juniper colour. That's a nice one. Or like I say, you can dye your own. So this is using spearmint, and then I'm using 3 different colours of alcohol inks to dye the paper. I'll link those below for the colours I'm using. So yeah, I'm gonna grab a quick break now and go and get some lunch, and I'll see you shortly. So I'm back at my desk now, and I'm gonna make a start on these roses. So the petals have already dried, which is great. And I'm going to start just by doing the first few layers. So I always think it's best when you're doing a flower like this that has a lot of petals, if you can let it dry a little bit in between the layers. It's not completely necessary, like if you're short on time, then it's doable without letting them dry in between. But it does seem to give it a bit more stability, and it makes it a lot easier, I think, if you've got that solid base to attach your flowers to. You've got a bit more control over where they go. So for this project, I do have a day or two flex, not too much, but we have enough time that I can leave them a little bit between layers. So I'm going to do the start of the main rose, and then I'm also going to do 2 rose buds. So I've got the petals for those rose buds as well, because they're only a few small ones. So I'm going to make a start on those now, and then they can be drying while I work on something else. So this is what the petals look like when you first get them off the cling film, when they've started to dry. They tend to be all curled up like this, but don't worry, they completely stretch out as normal. This is just how they come off. So I'm going to start by attaching those onto my wire. I've trimmed my wire down already, so they want them to be a specific length, so that's quite good. These are going to be short ones, and I'm just going to make a start. And I did decide I'm not going to use the pan pastels on these, because actually I really like the colour as it's come out. So I did some of these smaller ones as a flat colour like that, and then on the larger petals there's more of a gradient. All right, so I've done my rosebuds. I've got 2 rosebuds and I've got a centre. So at this point, the rosebud and the roses are the same. So for the main rose, I'll just add more petals, but the rosebuds are kind of done petals wise with this one. So while those petals dry a bit, I'm going to fatten up the stem for my rosebuds. So I'm just going to use some scrap crepe paper to do that. And I've been starting to do that on a lot of flowers lately, and I'm really enjoying how it looks. I'm just going to do a little bit on these. They don't need to be that much thicker, but I just like to give them a little bit more than the standard wire thickness. So it's nearly 4 o'clock, which is the end of the workday for me. Definitely not the end of the day. Whole other job starts right now. My little man is on his way home from daycare, so I got to go and get sorted for mum mode. So I just want to show you where I'm at. So I've made all of the leaves and put all of the details onto those as well now. So I'm just going to do a coat of Mod Podge on those. And then you can see here I've finished the rose buds and I've put the calyxes onto them. So I just need to now continue to add petals to the main rose. So yeah, I mean, it's been a productive day. Not as productive as I would like. I still have more to work on. I'm going to try and do an hour or two tonight after little man's gone to bed. And we'll see how I get on with the rest. But yeah, it's been a good day in the office and it's nice to just sit and create and to work on some new projects. So hopefully I can pull all this together ready to submit in a day or two, and then we'll see what comes of it. But it's been great hanging out with you, so hopefully I will see you again very soon. And in the meantime, happy flower making.